The Survival Expo, Deep Waters Chapter 1. Into the Abyss. John Paul Martinez's perspective. The transport vessel Leviathan's dream cut through the Pacific swells like a steel knife, carrying its cargo of 24 competitors toward the most dangerous tournament on Earth. John Paul Martinez stood at 7 feet tall on the deployment deck, his athletic frame casting a long shadow in the harsh fluorescent lighting. 20 years of competitive swimming, powerlifting, and mixed martial arts had sculpted him into a human weapon, but even his confidence wavered as he stared into the dark waters ahead. Final equipment check, barked Sergeant Hayes, the tournament coordinator whose scarred face spoke of his own survival in these waters 5 years prior. Fabricator units, basic diving gear, emergency rations, and collection tools only. Everything else, you build or you die. John Paul's fingers traced over his standard issue gear, a fabricator unit the size of a large backpack, military-grade diving equipment rated for 300 meters, 3 days of compressed rations, and a resource collection kit with scanning capabilities. Most importantly, the neural interface headband that would allow him to operate the fabricator through direct thought control, technology that had revolutionized underwater construction but required intense mental focus to master. Listen up, meat, Hayes continued, his voice cutting through the nervous chatter. The Resurrection Zone contains every apex predator that ever ruled Earth's oceans. Megalodon sharks the size of subway cars, Mosasaurus that can swallow you whole, and kraken octopi with tentacles longer than this ship. The force field keeps them contained to your 100 square mile hunting ground, but it also keeps you trapped with them. Through the porthole, John Paul could see the shimmering distortion that marked the force field boundary, a technological marvel that had taken decades to perfect and cost more than most nations' GDP to maintain. Inside that barrier, humanity's greatest predators had been brought back from extinction using genetic reconstruction technology, creating an ecosystem of pure nightmare for the entertainment of billions of viewers worldwide. Your fabricator can build anything from raw materials, Hayes explained, holding up one of the quantum-powered devices. Underwater bases, submarines, weapons, armor, even creature-taming equipment. But remember, resources are limited, locations are random, and the creatures are always hunting. The last person alive wins 50 million credits and global fame. Everyone else becomes fish food. John Paul's deployment coordinates flashed on his wrist display. Sector 12 Alpha, depth 75 meters, thermal vent region. A challenging but manageable starting position with geothermal energy sources and rich mineral deposits. He'd studied every possible drop zone during his 6 months of preparation, memorizing resource distributions and predator migration patterns. Remember the 3 rules, Hayes said grimly. Build fast, stay hidden, and never trust the water. These creatures have been hunting and killing for millions of years. They know this environment better than you ever will. The deployment bay doors cycled open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing the dark waters below. John Paul checked his breathing apparatus one final time as the countdown began. 10 seconds. May the depths have mercy on your souls. John Paul leaped into the void, his powerful frame cutting through the water as he descended toward his designated coordinates. The fabricator's weight dragged at his shoulders, but his swimming strength easily compensated as he oriented himself in the alien blue darkness. 50 meters down, his scanner activated automatically, immediately detecting massive life signs moving in the distance. The display showed creatures 30 to 40 feet in length patrolling the outer edges of his sensor range. Lead sichthies, giant prehistoric fish that could swallow him in a single gulp. Closer in, smaller but more aggressive signatures indicated a pack of helicoprion, ancient sharks with bizarre spiral tooth arrangements that could carve through steel. Jesus, John Paul breathed into his regulator, watching the predator signatures shift and move around him. The tournament briefings hadn't adequately conveyed the sheer density of apex predators in these waters. He reached the thermal vent region at exactly 75 meters depth, finding a landscape that looked like an alien world. Massive stone chimneys belched superheated water rich with minerals, while strange tube worms and primitive crustaceans clustered around the heat sources. Most importantly, his scanner detected rich deposits of rare earth elements and metallic compounds, exactly what his fabricator would need to construct a proper base. John Paul activated his neural interface, feeling the familiar tingle as the fabricator synced with his thoughts. The quantum assembly unit hummed to life, its molecular processors ready to transform raw materials into whatever he could envision and design. First priority, shelter and concealment. He directed the fabricator toward a natural cave formation near the largest thermal vent, using the scanner data to map its interior. The cave extended back nearly 50 meters with multiple chambers and only 2 entrances, perfect for a defensive position. "Fabricator online," he said aloud, his voice carrying through the comm system that would broadcast to the global audience. "Beginning base construction in thermal vent cave system. Time to see what this baby can really do." The fabricator went to work with mechanical precision, breaking down mineral deposits and reconstructing them atom by atom into reinforced structural supports. John Paul watched in fascination as the cave entrance was sealed and pressurized, creating an airlock system that would allow him to work in a breathable atmosphere. Hours passed as he methodically built his underwater refuge. Pressurized living quarters with recycled air systems, fresh water distillation from seawater, and most crucially, expanded fabrication capabilities that would allow him to create more complex equipment. The thermal vent provided unlimited geothermal power, making his base self-sufficient and invisible to most predator detection methods. As the basic structure took shape, John Paul began working on his first major project, a creature detection and defense system. The fabricator created sensor arrays that could monitor for life signs within a 2-kilometer radius, while automated defensive turrets would discourage smaller predators from investigating his location. Phase 1 complete, he announced to the empty chamber as he finally removed his diving gear. Secure base established with power, air, water, and basic defenses. Time to start thinking about creature encounters. Through his sensors, he could observe other competitors struggling with their own base construction in distant sectors. Several had already attracted unwanted attention from the mega-predators, their panicked movements only serving to draw more creatures to their locations. But John Paul's athletic discipline kept him focused on systematic preparation rather than rushed expansion. Tomorrow he would begin the delicate process of creature interaction, starting small with manageable species before working his way up to the apex predators that ruled these resurrected waters. Dr. Sarah Chen's perspective. Dr. Sarah Chen had spent 15 years studying marine biology in the world's most dangerous waters. But nothing had prepared her for the concentrated nightmare of the Survival EXPO's resurrection zone. At 38, she brought academic expertise and field experience that few other competitors could match. But her deployment coordinates had landed her in one of the most challenging starting positions possible. Sector 5 Delta placed her in open water at 150 meters depth, with no natural shelter and limited mineral resources. Her scanner detected massive predator signatures in every direction, including what appeared to be a Mosasaurus patrol route that would bring the massive marine reptile directly through her area every few hours. "Shit, shit, shit," Sarah muttered as she descended toward her coordinates, watching the predator signatures shift ominously around her position. Open water deployment with apex predator migration routes. Did I piss off the tournament gods? Her marine biology background immediately kicked in as she analyzed the situation. Open water meant vulnerability but also opportunity. The larger predators typically ignored smaller creatures that didn't register as threats or prey. If she could make herself invisible to their hunting instincts, she might survive long enough to establish a base. The fabricator powered up as she reached her designated depth, its scanner immediately detecting the sparse resources available in this sector. Metallic compounds embedded in the seafloor, limited mineral deposits, and most promisingly, a field of deep-sea coral formations that could provide both raw materials and camouflage. Think like a fish, Sarah told herself, activating her neural interface to begin base construction. Predators hunt by sight, sound, and electrical signature. Make yourself invisible to all three. Her fabricator began creating something unprecedented, a bio-camouflaged base that would blend seamlessly with the coral formations. Using organic compounds extracted from the living coral, the quantum assemblers created structural materials that perfectly mimicked natural reef growth patterns. Base construction beginning, she announced, her voice steady despite the massive shadows moving beyond her sensor range. Biomimetic design using coral integration technology. If I'm lucky, the big boys will think I'm just another piece of reef. The construction process required delicate precision as Sarah's fabricator worked to integrate artificial structures with living coral without damaging the ecosystem that would serve as her camouflage. Her marine biology expertise proved invaluable as she guided the assembly process, creating a base that was as much biological as technological. Within hours, her refuge had become virtually invisible, a series of chambers that appeared to be natural coral formations but contained pressurized living spaces, fabrication facilities, and life support systems. The bio-integration even included living coral polyps that would continue growing, maintaining the camouflage and providing a renewable resource for future construction. But Sarah's real breakthrough came when she activated her creature scanning systems and realized the massive advantage her location provided. Open water meant she could observe predator behavior patterns across multiple sectors, gathering intelligence about creature movement and hunting behaviors that other competitors couldn't access. Holy shit, she whispered, watching her displays track dozens of apex predators across the tournament zone. I'm not in a bad position. I'm in an intelligence-gathering goldmine. Her fabricator immediately began creating advanced surveillance equipment, biomechanical sensor arrays that could monitor creature behavior from vast distances without triggering predator attention. By the end of her first day, Sarah had established the most comprehensive predator tracking network in the tournament zone. Phase 1 complete, she logged into her personal recording system. Bio-camouflaged base fully integrated with natural coral reef. Predator surveillance network operational. I may not have the best starting position for resources, but I've got the best intel in the game. Through her sensor network, she watched as other competitors made critical mistakes, building bases that attracted predator attention, moving too aggressively through territorial waters, and failing to understand the complex ecosystem dynamics that governed creature behavior in the resurrection zone. Sarah's academic background gave her a crucial advantage that brute force couldn't match. She understood that survival in this environment meant thinking like the creatures themselves, using their instincts and behaviors to avoid confrontation rather than seeking it. Tomorrow I start creature interaction protocols, she said, watching a pack of smaller predators investigate one of her sensor arrays before dismissing it as uninteresting. Time to see if 15 years of marine biology can turn these killing machines into allies. Marcus, Tank, Rodriguez's Perspective Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez had survived 3 combat tours in underwater demolitions before entering the Survival EXPO. and his military engineering background made him one of the most dangerous competitors in the tournament. At 42, he brought 2 decades of explosive ordnance disposal and underwater construction experience to bear against the resurrected apex predators. His deployment coordinates dropped him into Sector 18 Bravo, a deep trench region at 200 meters depth with abundant mineral resources but absolutely nightmarish predator concentrations. The scanner readings showed creatures that defied rational thought: kraken octopi with tentacles over 60 feet long, schools of Dunkleosteus armored fish that could bite through submarine hulls. And worst of all, what appeared to be a mated pair of Mosasaurus using the trench as their primary hunting ground. Outstanding, Marcus growled, checking his weapons inventory as he descended into the abyss. Drop the demo expert into the apocalypse trench. Someone up there has a sense of humor. But if the tournament organizers expected him to panic, they had seriously underestimated military training. Marcus's fabricator came online as he reached the trench floor, immediately beginning construction of something no other competitor would even attempt: a fortified military bunker designed to withstand direct assault from creatures the size of naval vessels. Base construction commencing, he announced, his voice carrying the calm professionalism that had kept him alive through countless underwater explosions. Military-grade fortification using reinforced carbosteel composite. Let's see these prehistoric bastards chew through Marine Corps engineering. His fabricator worked with industrial efficiency, creating defensive structures that incorporated everything Marcus had learned about underwater fortification. Blast-resistant walls thick enough to stop torpedoes, overlapping fields of fire for automated defense systems, and multiple escape routes in case the primary position became compromised. But Marcus's real innovation was the integration of explosive ordnance into his base design. The fabricator created a network of shaped charges throughout the trench walls, allowing him to collapse entire sections of the seafloor if the situation became desperate. It was overkill by any reasonable standard, but Marcus had learned that overkill was just proper preparation in hostile territory. Defensive perimeter established, he reported as the last structural supports locked into place. Automated weapons systems online. Explosive charges armed and ready. Come at me, you ancient sons of bitches. The massive kraken that had been observing his construction from the deep trench shadows finally decided to investigate, its tentacles reaching toward the new installation with predatory curiosity. Marcus's response was immediate and overwhelming. Automated plasma cannons lit up the darkness while shaped charges created avalanches of rock that forced the creature to retreat into deeper water. Contact. Large hostile neutralized through superior firepower. Marcus called out, his military training taking over as he monitored sensor readings. Note for the record: explosive charges remain effective against creatures regardless of their extinction status. But even as he celebrated his defensive success, Marcus recognized a crucial limitation in his approach. Military fortification was excellent for holding territory, but the tournament required more than just survival. It required adaptation and growth. His fabricator would need to create more than just weapons if he wanted to thrive in this environment. Phase 1 complete, he announced, reviewing his base's defensive capabilities from the safety of his command center. Fortress construction successful. Automated defenses operational. Time to start thinking about offensive capabilities and creature interaction. Through his sensor arrays, Marcus could observe the other competitors' various approaches to base construction and creature management. Some were trying stealth, others were attempting cooperation, but Marcus's military mind immediately began calculating how to turn the apex predators into weapons rather than obstacles. Tomorrow I start weaponization research, he said grimly, watching as his automated systems tracked multiple large predators around his position. If these things want to hunt, I'll teach them to hunt my enemies instead of me. Rebecca, Phoenix, Sullivan's perspective. Rebecca Sullivan had earned her nickname, Phoenix, through a combination of acrobatic skills and an almost supernatural ability to escape from situations that should have killed her. At 29, she brought 15 years of extreme sports experience and professional stunt work to the most dangerous competition on Earth. But her deployment coordinates tested even her legendary luck. Sector 9 Gamma placed her in a kelp forest region at 100 meters depth, surrounded by some of the most aggressive mid-tier predators in the resurrection zone. Schools of helicoprion sharks patrolled the kelp corridors, while massive ammonites used their jet propulsion to dart between the towering seaweed stalks. Worst of all, her scanner detected the territorial markers of what appeared to be a family group of plesiosaurs that considered the entire kelp forest their personal hunting ground. Kelp forest deployment, Rebecca said, her voice carrying a mixture of excitement and apprehension as she descended toward her coordinates. High mobility environment with multiple vertical levels. Could be perfect for someone with my skill set, or it could be a three-dimensional death trap. Her acrobatic background immediately suggested a completely different approach to base construction than her competitors. Instead of building a single fortified position, Rebecca's fabricator began creating a network of small, interconnected shelters throughout the kelp forest's vertical structure. Base construction beginning, she announced, her fabricator already working on the first of what would become dozens of micro-bases. Distributed network design using vertical mobility architecture. If I can't outfight them, I'll outmaneuver them. Each micro-base contained essential survival equipment and fabrication capabilities, but no single position held everything she needed to survive. The design required constant movement between locations, but it also meant that no predator could eliminate her entire operation with a single attack. Rebecca's extreme sports background proved invaluable as she navigated the kelp forest's complex three-dimensional environment. Her fabricator created specialized mobility equipment, underwater jet propulsion units, grappling systems for rapid movement between kelp stalks, and most importantly, stealth technology that allowed her to move through the water without triggering predator attention. Mobility base alpha complete, she reported, finishing the first of her network positions. Switching to location beta for fabrication expansion. These kelp corridors are like underwater highways if you know how to use them. But Rebecca's real breakthrough came when she encountered her first creature, a young plesiosaur that had become separated from its family group and was hiding in the kelp forest's lower levels. Instead of fleeing or fighting, Rebecca's stunt work experience suggested a completely different approach. Easy there, beautiful, she said softly, activating her fabricator to create specialized feeding equipment. You're scared and lost, and I bet you're hungry too. Let's see if we can be friends. Her acrobatic skills allowed her to approach the massive marine reptile without triggering its defensive instincts. While her fabricator created synthetic food compounds that matched the creature's nutritional requirements. Within hours, Rebecca had achieved something that marine biologists had considered impossible: direct peaceful contact with a resurrected apex predator. First creature contact successful, she announced with obvious excitement. Young plesiosaur responding to feeding and non-threatening behavior. Attempting to establish trust relationship. The taming process required patience and understanding that Rebecca's extreme sports background had taught her. Dangerous situations required respect rather than domination, cooperation rather than conquest. The young plesiosaur gradually began following her movements through the kelp forest, providing both companionship and protection from the smaller predators that hunted in the area. Phase 1 complete, Rebecca logged as she settled into her primary base for the night. Distributed base network operational across kelp forest. First creature taming successful with juvenile plesiosaur. Tomorrow I start working on expanding both my base network and creature relationships. Through her multiple observation posts, Rebecca could monitor the other competitors' progress across different sectors. Each was taking radically different approaches to survival, fortification, camouflage, intelligence gathering, and her own mobility-based strategy. But none of them had yet achieved the creature report that Rebecca was developing. "The secret isn't fighting them," she whispered, watching her plesiosaur companion settle into a resting position near her base. "It's understanding that they're just animals trying to survive, same as us. Treat them with respect, and maybe they'll return the favor." Chapter 2. First Contact. John Paul's perspective. Dawn in the Resurrection Zone was marked by a subtle shift in the bioluminescent patterns that provided the primary light source in the depths. John Paul woke in his thermal vent base feeling rested and optimistic. His first night had passed without major incident, and his defensive systems had successfully deterred several small predators from investigating his location. His morning scanner sweep revealed encouraging news. A school of Opabinia, bizarre creatures with 5 mushroom-shaped eyes and grasping proboscis, had taken up residence near his base, apparently attracted by the warmth from the thermal vents. These primitive creatures were perfect for his first taming attempts, large enough to be useful but small enough to manage safely. Day 2 begins, John Paul announced, suiting up in the enhanced diving gear his fabricator had constructed overnight. "Time to make some friends in this underwater nightmare." His fabricator had created specialized creature interaction equipment based on tournament briefing materials, synthetic food compounds tailored to various species' nutritional needs, bioscanner arrays that could read creature emotional states, and most importantly, taming harnesses that would allow him to establish control over successfully domesticated animals. John Paul approached the Opabinia school with the same patient confidence that had made him successful in competitive athletics. These creatures operated on instincts honed over millions of years, but they were also intelligent enough to recognize beneficial relationships when offered. "Easy there," he said softly, releasing a carefully measured dose of synthetic food into the water. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to make life easier for both of us." The lead Opabinia's bizarre sensory organs immediately detected the food, its 5 eyes tracking John Paul's movements as it cautiously approached. The creature's proboscis extended toward the offering, testing the food's chemical composition before accepting the meal. Within minutes, the entire school had surrounded John Paul, their alien forms creating a protective circle as they competed for the synthetic nutrition. His bioscanner confirmed what his athletic instincts had told him. The creatures were responding positively to his non-threatening behavior and food offerings. First feeding successful, John Paul reported, watching as the largest Opabinia allowed him to attach a bio-monitoring device to its carapace, attempting harness attachment for domestication protocols. The taming harness was a marvel of biotechnology that interfaced directly with the creature's nervous system, allowing John Paul to communicate basic commands while monitoring the animal's health and emotional state. The process required delicate precision, but his steady hands and patient approach made the Opabinia comfortable with the procedure. Taming successful, John Paul announced with genuine excitement as the bioscanner confirmed full domestication. First creature ally acquired. Opabinia designated Scout, due to superior sensory capabilities. His newly tamed Opabinia immediately began demonstrating its value, using its enhanced vision to detect resources and threats that John Paul's mechanical scanners missed. The creature's natural behavior patterns made it an ideal reconnaissance unit for exploring the dangerous waters beyond his base. But Scout's real value became apparent when John Paul's sensors detected something massive approaching from the deep water, a helicoprion pack that had been drawn to his area by the feeding activity. The ancient shark's bizarre spiral tooth arrangements could carve through his base's outer defenses, making them a serious threat to his survival. Large hostiles approaching, John Paul announced, watching as Scout's sensory organs tracked the predator's movements, testing creature combat capabilities. Instead of fleeing, Scout positioned itself between John Paul and the approaching sharks, its proboscis extending in a defensive posture that seemed to communicate territorial claims. The helicoprion pack paused their advance, apparently recognizing that John Paul was under the protection of a legitimate resident of these waters. Incredible, John Paul breathed, watching as the standoff continued. The tamed creature is providing diplomatic immunity. The sharks recognize its territorial rights and won't attack while I'm under its protection. The encounter demonstrated something crucial about the Resurrection Zone's ecosystem. The creatures operated according to complex social hierarchies and territorial agreements that humans could potentially exploit. Successful taming didn't just provide allies, it granted access to the underwater society that governed predator behavior. Phase 2 complete, John Paul logged as the helicoprion pack finally withdrew to hunt elsewhere. First creature taming successful with enhanced benefits. Scout providing both reconnaissance and diplomatic protection. Time to expand the operation. Dr. Sarah Chen's perspective. Sarah's second day brought a breakthrough that would define her entire tournament strategy. Her bio-camouflaged base had successfully blended with the coral reef, but more importantly, her extensive sensor network had revealed patterns in predator behavior that other competitors were completely missing. The key insight, Sarah explained to her recording system while reviewing overnight sensor data, is that these aren't random killing machines. They're intelligent animals operating in a complex social ecosystem with established territories, migration patterns, and communication protocols. Her marine biology background allowed her to interpret creature behavior in ways that her competitors couldn't match. The massive mosasaurus that patrolled her sector wasn't just hunting randomly. It was following specific routes that avoided the territories of other apex predators while maximizing access to prey species. More importantly, Sarah had identified gaps in the patrol patterns where smaller creatures could move safely without triggering predator attention. Her bio-camouflaged base was perfectly positioned to observe these safe corridors and potentially exploit them for resource gathering. Beginning creature interaction protocols, Sarah announced, activating her fabricator to create specialized approach equipment. Target species. Ammonite school observed using safe corridor during off-peak predator activity. The ammonites were perfect first targets for taming attempts. Intelligent cephalopods with jet propulsion capability that could serve as both transportation and reconnaissance assets. Their natural behavior patterns indicated complex social structures that suggested they could form cooperative relationships with other intelligent species. Sarah's approach required the patience that had made her successful in academic research. Instead of directly approaching the creatures, she positioned synthetic food sources along their natural migration route, allowing them to become accustomed to her presence gradually. Indirect contact established, she reported, watching through her sensors as the Ammonite school began incorporating her feeding stations into their daily routine. Creatures showing habituation response to human presence. Attempting direct interaction. When Sarah finally revealed herself to the Ammonites, they reacted with curiosity rather than fear. Her patient approach and understanding of their behavioral patterns had established her as a non-threatening presence in their environment. The taming process was unlike anything described in the tournament briefings. Instead of using harnesses or control devices, Sarah established genuine communication with the lead ammonite through a combination of chemical signals and movement patterns that mimicked their natural social behaviors. Breakthrough achieved, Sarah announced with academic excitement. Successful communication established with ammonite leader. No technological control required, cooperative relationship based on mutual benefit. Her tamed ammonites provided capabilities that no mechanical equipment could match. Their jet propulsion allowed rapid movement through the water. Their natural camouflage made them nearly invisible to predator detection, and most importantly, their intelligence allowed them to serve as autonomous agents carrying out complex tasks. Phase 2 complete, Sarah logged as her new allies began demonstrating their abilities. Cooperative relationship established with ammonite school. Intelligence gathering capabilities expanded exponentially. Time to start mapping the entire ecosystem. Marcus Rodriguez's perspective. Marcus's fortress base had successfully deterred several predator investigations during the night. But his military mind was already planning the next phase of operations. Defensive fortification was just the beginning. He needed to establish offensive capabilities and expand his operational territory. Day 2 objectives, Marcus announced, reviewing his base's defensive logs. Expand perimeter control and establish forward observation posts. Time to go from defensive to aggressive. His fabricator had been working overnight to create advanced weaponry specifically designed for underwater creature combat. Harpoon systems with explosive warheads, sonic disruptors that could confuse predator echolocation, and most importantly, capture nets strong enough to restrain even the largest apex predators. But Marcus's real innovation was the application of military tactics to creature domestication. Instead of trying to befriend the predators, he would demonstrate superior force and establish dominance through controlled combat scenarios. Target acquired, Marcus said, watching as a lone Dunkleosteus investigated his perimeter defenses. Armored fish, approximately 20 feet, heavily armored skull. Perfect test subject for dominance protocols. The ancient fish's approach triggered Marcus's automated defense systems, but instead of driving it away, he used non-lethal weapons to demonstrate his technological superiority. Sonic charges disoriented the creature while capture nets restricted its movement, putting it completely at Marcus's mercy. Hostile neutralized and captured, Marcus reported, activating his fabricator to create a specialized holding facility. Attempting dominance-based taming protocols. The process was more like military interrogation than animal training. Marcus provided food and comfort while making it clear that the creature's survival depended entirely on his goodwill. The Dunkleosteus's primitive intelligence gradually recognized the power dynamic and accepted Marcus's dominance. Taming successful through superior firepower demonstration, Marcus announced, watching as his newly controlled creature responded to basic commands. Dunkleosteus designated tank, for obvious reasons. Expanding capture operations. Tank's heavily armored skull and powerful jaws made it an ideal assault unit for expanding Marcus's territory. The creature could punch through defensive positions that would stop conventional weapons while providing mobile firepower for offensive operations. But Marcus's real breakthrough came when he realized that dominance-based taming created different relationships than the cooperative approaches other competitors were using. His controlled creatures weren't allies. They were weapons that fought because they feared him more than they feared other predators. Phase 2 complete, Marcus logged as Tank demolished a rock formation that had been blocking access to mineral deposits. First creature weapon acquired and operational. Expanding to multiple species for combined arms operations. Rebecca Sullivan's perspective. Rebecca's distributed base network had allowed her to survive the night in the kelp forest's dangerous environment. But her real success came from the relationship she'd established with the young plesiosaur. The creature had appointed itself her guardian, using its natural predator instincts to protect her from the aggressive species that hunted in the area. Day 2 begins with unexpected advantages, Rebecca announced. Watching as her plesiosaur companion, whom she'd named Dancer, for its graceful movements, patrolled the area around her primary base. Creature alliance providing security benefits beyond original projections. But Rebecca's acrobatic background suggested possibilities that went far beyond simple protection. Dancer's size and strength made it a perfect partner for extreme mobility through the kelp forest's three-dimensional environment. Attempting mounted reconnaissance, Rebecca said, activating her fabricator to create specialized riding equipment. If this works, I'll have access to mobility that no other competitor can match. The process required all of Rebecca's extreme sports experience as she designed equipment that would allow her to safely ride a creature that could move at speeds exceeding 30 miles per hour. Underwater. The taming harness doubled as a safety system, while specialized breathing equipment allowed her to maintain life support during high-speed maneuvers. Mounting successful, Rebecca reported, feeling Dancer's powerful muscles surge beneath her as they began their first joint patrol. Creature cooperation providing unprecedented mobility capabilities. The combination of Rebecca's acrobatic skills and Dancer's natural abilities created something that seemed almost magical, a human-creature partnership that could navigate the kelp forest's complex environment with incredible speed and precision. They could reach areas that other competitors couldn't access while avoiding predators that would have detected conventional approach methods. But the real breakthrough came when they encountered a school of aggressive helicoprion sharks that had been terrorizing the kelp forest's smaller inhabitants. Instead of fleeing, Rebecca and Dancer worked together to drive the predators away, using coordinated maneuvers that confused and frustrated the ancient sharks. Combat partnership successful, Rebecca announced with obvious excitement. Human-creature cooperation creating tactical capabilities beyond individual limitations. Expanding partnership protocols. Her success with Dancer attracted the attention of other creatures in the kelp forest, particularly the family group of adult plesiosaurs that had been observing her activities. Instead of viewing her as an intruder, they began recognizing her as a legitimate member of Dancer's social group. Phase 2 complete, Rebecca logged as the adult plesiosaurs allowed her to approach their resting area. Multiple creature relationships established through successful partnership demonstration. Kelp forest becoming cooperative territory rather than hostile environment. Chapter 3. The Ecosystem Wars. John Paul's perspective. 3 days into the tournament, John Paul had transformed his thermal vent base into a creature research and training facility. Scout's success had attracted additional Opabinia to his territory, creating a reconnaissance network that monitored predator movements across multiple sectors. But his sensors were detecting something that worried him: increased aggression among the apex predators as competitors began establishing territorial control. The ecosystem is destabilizing, John Paul observed, watching his tactical displays track massive creatures moving in coordinated patterns. Successful creature taming is triggering territorial responses from wild predators. They're starting to hunt the competitors specifically. Scout's enhanced sensory organs had detected something alarming. A massive mosasaurus was changing its migration patterns, actively seeking out areas where human activity had been detected. The 60-foot marine reptile wasn't just hunting for food. It was eliminating what it perceived as threats to its territorial dominance. Large hostile approaching from Sector 7, John Paul announced, watching the massive signature move toward his area. Mosasaurus, estimated length 60 feet, showing aggressive hunting patterns specifically targeting human activity. His base defenses were designed to handle smaller predators, but a creature the size of a naval vessel required a completely different approach. John Paul's fabricator immediately began creating his most ambitious project yet, a powered exoskeleton that would allow him to fight alongside his tamed creatures as an equal partner. Emergency construction protocols activated, he said, his athletic confidence returning as he prepared for the challenge. If these things want to hunt humans specifically, they're about to learn why humans became the apex predators on land. The exoskeleton was a masterpiece of underwater engineering, powered armor that enhanced his already formidable strength while providing life support and weapon systems designed for creature combat. Combined with Scout's reconnaissance capabilities, John Paul would have the tactical advantage despite being massively outgunned. When the Mosasaurus finally arrived, John Paul was ready. The creature's massive form darkened the water around his base as it searched for the source of the human activity that had triggered its hunting instincts. Contact! John Paul called out, launching himself from his base in the powered armor. Engaging hostile Mosasaurus with creature support. Time to establish species dominance. The battle that followed was unlike anything in the tournament's history. John Paul's enhanced strength and Scout's sensory guidance allowed them to match the Mosasaurus's speed and power, while his armor's weapon systems targeted the creature's vulnerable points with surgical precision. But the real turning point came when John Paul demonstrated something the ancient predator had never encountered: tactical intelligence combined with technological superiority. Instead of trying to kill the massive creature, he used sonic disruptors to confuse its hunting instincts while establishing dominance through superior strategic thinking. Hostile neutralized through technological superiority, John Paul announced as the Mosasaurus retreated into deeper water, its primitive brain recognizing that this particular human was too dangerous to hunt. Territory established through species dominance demonstration. The victory sent shockwaves through the Resurrection Zone's ecosystem. Other apex predators began avoiding John Paul's territory, recognizing that the thermal vent region was now controlled by a species that could fight back effectively. Day 3 complete, John Paul logged, reviewing the tactical implications of his success. Apex predator deterrence achieved through combat demonstration. Territory secure for expansion operations. Dr. Sarah Chen's perspective. Sarah's sensor network had detected the dramatic battle between John Paul and the Mosasaurus, providing her with crucial intelligence about both the competitor's capabilities and the predator's behavioral changes. Her academic background allowed her to understand the ecological implications better than anyone else in the tournament. The Resurrection Zone is experiencing cascading territorial conflicts, Sarah explained to her recording system while analyzing the sensor data. Successful human expansion is triggering evolutionary pressure that's making the predators more aggressive and more intelligent. Her bio-camouflaged base had allowed her to observe predator behavior without triggering territorial responses. But Sarah realized that passive observation wouldn't be enough to survive the escalating conflicts. She needed to establish active alliances with the creatures before the ecosystem became completely destabilized. Implementing advanced creature cooperation protocols, Sarah announced, activating her fabricator to create communication equipment specifically designed for complex species interaction. Target: Plesiosaur family group showing signs of advanced social organization. The plesiosaurs that frequented her sector displayed behavioral patterns that suggested genuine intelligence rather than just instinctive responses. Their hunting strategies showed long-term planning. Their social interactions included what appeared to be teaching behaviors, and most importantly, they demonstrated curiosity about her research activities. Sarah's approach required academic patience and scientific rigor. instead of trying to tame individual creatures. She worked to establish herself as a legitimate member of the plesiosaur social group through careful observation and mimicry of their communication patterns. Breakthrough in interspecies communication, Sarah reported with academic excitement. Plesiosaurs demonstrating symbolic thinking and abstract reasoning capabilities. Attempting full social integration, the process was unlike anything described in creature taming literature. Sarah gradually became accepted as an unusual but legitimate member of the plesiosaur pod, participating in their social activities while contributing her technological capabilities to their group's survival strategies. Her success created something unprecedented, a genuine alliance between human intelligence and predator instincts that combined the best capabilities of both species. The plesiosaurs provided protection and territorial knowledge, while Sarah offered strategic planning and technological solutions to environmental challenges. Phase 3 complete, Sarah logged as her allied plesiosaurs began incorporating her base into their territorial patrol routes. Full social integration achieved with apex predator species. Territory protected through cooperative alliance rather than dominance. But Sarah's sensors were detecting something that worried her: increased activity from the kraken octopi in the deep trenches. The massive cephalopods were responding to the territorial conflicts with their own expansion activities, threatening to destabilize the entire Resurrection Zone ecosystem. Marcus Rodriguez's perspective. Marcus's fortress base had become the center of an underwater military operation that would have impressed surface Navy commanders. Tank's successful capture had led to the acquisition of multiple creature weapons, creating a combined arms force that could challenge any threat in the Resurrection Zone. Day 3 operational report, Marcus announced from his command center. Multiple creature assets operational. Territory expanded through aggressive patrol operations. Ready for large-scale offensive actions. His creature arsenal now included Tank the Dunkleosteus for heavy assault, a pack of tamed helicoprion sharks for rapid response, and most importantly, a juvenile kraken that he'd captured using overwhelming firepower and dominance protocols. Each creature served a specific military function while remaining completely subordinated to Marcus's tactical control. But Marcus's military mind had identified a strategic opportunity that his competitors were missing. The territorial conflicts between wild predators and tamed creatures were creating power vacuums that could be exploited through coordinated military action. Implementing territorial expansion protocol, Marcus announced, watching his tactical displays show the locations of other competitors' bases. Target: Sector 12 Alpha Thermal Vent Region. Objective: resource acquisition and competitor elimination. His decision to target John Paul's territory wasn't personal, it was strategic necessity. The thermal vent region contained the richest mineral deposits in the tournament zone, and Marcus's military experience told him that resource control would determine the ultimate winner. The assault force that moved toward John Paul's territory was a masterpiece of underwater military coordination. Tank led the advance with its heavily armored bulk, while the helicoprion pack provided flanking maneuvers, and the juvenile kraken used its intelligence to coordinate complex tactical movements. Assault force moving to contact, Marcus reported, his creature weapons responding to his commands with military precision. Estimated time to target, 40 minutes. Enemy defensive capabilities unknown but presumed significant. But Marcus had underestimated both John Paul's defensive preparations and the loyalty his creatures had developed toward their human partner. When the assault force reached the thermal vent region, they found themselves facing not just technological defenses, but genuine creature allies willing to fight to protect their territory. Contact. Contact. Enemy forces larger than anticipated. Marcus called out as the battle erupted around him. multiple apex predators responding to defensive calls, initiating full engagement protocols. The conflict that followed demonstrated the fundamental difference between creature domination and creature partnership. Marcus's controlled animals fought because they feared him, but John Paul's allied creatures fought because they chose to protect their shared territory. Tactical withdrawal initiated, Marcus announced as his assault force began taking casualties from the coordinated defense. Enemy alliance structure more sophisticated than projected. Regrouping for alternative approach. Rebecca Sullivan's perspective. Rebecca's distributed base network throughout the kelp forest had allowed her to observe the escalating conflicts between competitors without becoming directly involved. Her partnership with Dancer and the extended plesiosaur family had created a neutral territory that other creatures respected. But the increasing aggression throughout the resurrection zone was threatening even the kelp forest's relative stability. The ecosystem is going to war, Rebecca observed, watching through her sensor network as Marcus's assault force retreated from John Paul's territory. Every successful creature alliance is triggering defensive responses from competitors and wild predators alike. Her acrobatic background had taught her that survival in dangerous environments required adaptation and timing rather than direct confrontation. While her competitors were establishing territorial control through force or alliance, Rebecca had been building something different. A network of neutral relationships that allowed her to move safely through areas where others couldn't go. Implementing mobile diplomacy protocols, Rebecca announced, preparing Dancer for their most ambitious journey yet. Objective: establish communication links between competitor territories to prevent ecosystem collapse. The idea was audacious but potentially brilliant. Use her unique mobility and creature relationships to serve as a neutral mediator between the various factions that were forming in the resurrection zone. Her extreme sports experience had taught her that cooperation often succeeded where competition failed. Rebecca and Dancer's journey through the contested waters required all of their combined skills. They used the kelp forest's natural cover to avoid territorial patrols while relying on Dancer's natural diplomatic immunity to pass through areas controlled by wild predators. First diplomatic contact established, Rebecca reported as they reached the edge of Sarah's territory. Dr. Chen's plesiosaur allies recognizing Dancer's family connections. Attempting intergroup communication. The meeting between Rebecca's extended plesiosaur family and Sarah's allied pod created something unprecedented. A creature-mediated diplomatic session that allowed two human competitors to communicate without triggering territorial conflicts. Breakthrough in competitor cooperation, Rebecca announced with obvious excitement. Successful mediation between human factions using creature social networks. Implementing expanded diplomatic protocols. Her success demonstrated that the tournament didn't have to become a war of extermination. Creature alliances could create opportunities for human cooperation that benefited all participants while stabilizing the ecosystem that supported their survival. Phase 3 complete, Rebecca logged as she prepared for the dangerous journey to Marcus's fortress. Diplomatic network established between competitor territories. Attempting to prevent ecosystem war through creature-mediated cooperation. But Rebecca's sensors were detecting something that made even her optimistic approach seem insufficient. Massive movement in the deepest parts of the resurrection zone as creatures that had never been catalogued began responding to the surface conflicts with aggressive territorial expansion of their own. Chapter 4. Alliance and Betrayal. John Paul's perspective. The aftermath of Marcus's failed assault left John Paul's territory scarred but victorious. His alliance with Scout and the expanded Opabinia colony had proven capable of defending against coordinated attack. But the battle had revealed a crucial weakness in his position. Isolation made him vulnerable to sustained assault by multiple competitors working together. Post-combat analysis complete, John Paul announced, reviewing damage reports from his thermal vent base. Defensive capabilities proven against single competitor assault, but resource expenditure unsustainable for prolonged conflict. Need to establish broader alliance network. His enhanced sensors had detected Rebecca's diplomatic approach during the battle, and her creature-mediated communication proposal offered exactly what John Paul's strategic situation required: cooperation with other competitors to prevent the tournament from devolving into total warfare. Incoming neutral contact, John Paul reported as Dancer and Rebecca approached his territorial boundary. Plesiosaur showing diplomatic recognition signals. Attempting communication with competitor Phoenix. The meeting that followed was unlike anything in tournament history. Rebecca's extreme sports background and John Paul's athletic discipline created natural understanding between competitors who shared a commitment to excellence through preparation and adaptation rather than pure aggression. Your approach to creature partnership is impressive, John Paul said, watching as Dancer interacted peacefully with Scout and his Opabinia allies. My alliance with Scout has been defensive, but your relationship with Dancer shows genuine cooperation potential. That's exactly what we need more of, Rebecca replied, her enthusiasm for the diplomatic mission evident in her voice. The Resurrection Zone can support multiple human territories if we stop treating each other as primary threats. The real danger is ecosystem collapse from too much conflict. John Paul's military instincts immediately recognized the strategic value of Rebecca's proposal. Coordinated defense against wild predator expansion would be more effective than isolated territorial control. While information sharing could help all participants avoid the catastrophic encounters that had already eliminated several competitors. Alliance proposal accepted, John Paul announced after reviewing his tactical situation. Establishing cooperative protocols with Phoenix territory. Joint defense against apex predator expansion, resource sharing for mutual benefit, and coordinated response to external threats. The formal alliance between John Paul's thermal vent territory and Rebecca's kelp forest network created the first multi-territorial cooperation agreement in tournament history. Their combined creature allies established overlapping patrol routes that created safe corridors for resource gathering and expansion activities. But the alliance's real value became apparent when John Paul's sensors detected something that made even his enhanced confidence waver: massive movement from the deepest parts of the Resurrection Zone. As creatures that had never been catalogued began responding to the surface conflicts. Unknown contacts rising from maximum depth, John Paul reported, sharing sensor data with Rebecca through their newly established communication link. Multiple signatures, estimated size exceeding anything in tournament documentation. Something big is waking up down there. Dr. Sarah Chen's perspective. Sarah's scientific analysis of the emerging deep water contacts provided the alliance with crucial intelligence about threats that no individual competitor could handle alone. Her academic background in marine biology allowed her to interpret the sensor readings in ways that revealed the true scope of what they were facing. Deep trench analysis complete, Sarah announced during her first joint briefing with John Paul and Rebecca. The contacts rising from maximum depth are not individual creatures. They're ecosystem migrants that have been dormant in the abyssal trenches since the Resurrection Zone was established. Her research revealed that the tournament organizers had been less than completely honest about the creatures contained within the force field barrier. The documented species were just the surface population. The deep trenches contained apex predators that made Mosasaurus and Kraken look like small fish. Primary concern, Leviathan Melville, Sarah continued, displaying her analysis data through the Alliance communication network. Prehistoric whale species with intelligence levels approaching modern dolphins, but with size and aggression that exceeds any creature currently active in the tournament zone. The emerging Leviathan were not just larger than the surface predators, they were smarter. Their behavior patterns showed coordinated pack hunting that suggested genuine strategic thinking. And their territorial expansion was systematically eliminating smaller predator species that competed for resources. Secondary concern: unknown cephalopod species, Sarah added, her academic excitement tempered by genuine alarm. Tentacle patterns indicate octopi or squid with reach extending over 100 feet. Intelligence levels unknown but presumed extreme. But Sarah's most disturbing discovery was that the deep water emergence wasn't random. It was a direct response to the surface conflicts that human activity had triggered. The resurrection zone's ecosystem operated on multiple levels, and disturbance at the surface was activating dormant populations that had been hibernating in the deepest areas. Recommendation: immediate cessation of territorial conflicts between human competitors, Sarah concluded. Continued warfare will trigger additional emergence events that could destabilize the entire ecosystem beyond survival threshold. Her alliance with the plesiosaur had already provided crucial protection against the emerging threats. But Sarah recognized that even apex predator allies might not be sufficient against creatures that had evolved to dominate other apex predators. Alliance expansion protocols initiated, Sarah announced, preparing her communication equipment for the most ambitious diplomatic mission yet attempted. Attempting contact with competitor tank for four-way cooperation agreement. Survival requires all human territories working together. Marcus Rodriguez's perspective: Marcus's military pride had been stung by his failed assault on John Paul's territory. But his strategic mind recognized that the emerging deep water threats represented a far greater danger than any human competitor. His fortress base was receiving sensor readings that challenged everything he thought he knew about the resurrection zone's creature populations. Contact report: massive hostiles rising from deep trench sectors, Marcus announced, watching his tactical displays track signatures that dwarfed even his most pessimistic projections. Leviathan pod, estimated 12 individuals, moving in coordinated assault formation toward surface territories. His creature weapons, tank, the Helicoprion pack, and the juvenile kraken, were formidable against normal predators but completely outclassed by the emerging giants. Marcus's military experience told him that this was the kind of threat that required coalition warfare rather than individual response. Incoming diplomatic contact, Marcus reported as Rebecca and Dancer approached his fortress perimeter. Phoenix competitor requesting communication. Defensive systems standing down for neutral approach. The diplomatic meeting that followed tested every aspect of Marcus's military training. His instincts demanded preparation for betrayal and ambush, but his strategic analysis confirmed that cooperation was the only viable response to threats that exceeded individual capability. "Your fortress construction is impressive," Rebecca said, observing the military precision of Marcus's defensive installations. "But even your firepower won't stop 12 Leviathan working together. We need combined defense to survive what's coming." Marcus's tactical mind immediately began calculating the advantages of alliance cooperation. Combined territorial control would create larger defensive perimeters, while shared intelligence would provide early warning of apex predator movements. Most importantly, coordinated creature assets would create combined arms capabilities that individual competitors couldn't achieve. "Alliance proposal under consideration," Marcus replied, his military training warring with his competitive instincts. Terms: shared intelligence, coordinated defense against apex predator threats, resource trading for mutual benefit. Individual territorial autonomy maintained. But the decision was made for him when his sensors detected direct approach by the leading Leviathan pod. The creatures were moving with obvious intelligence and coordination, their 60-foot forms creating formation patterns that Marcus recognized from military assault doctrines. Contact. Multiple large hostiles approaching from deep water. Marcus announced, his automated defense systems activating as the ancient whales began their attack. Request immediate alliance support. Cannot handle this alone. The battle that erupted around Marcus's fortress demonstrated the absolute necessity of cooperation against the deep water threats. His individual defenses, no matter how sophisticated, were insufficient against creatures that could coordinate tactical movements and adapt to technological countermeasures in real time. Alliance accepted. Marcus called out as Rebecca's plesiosaur allies arrived to support his defensive operations. Implementing joint tactical protocols. All human competitors must work together or we all die. Rebecca Sullivan's perspective. Rebecca's diplomatic mission had succeeded beyond her wildest expectations. Creating a four-way alliance between all surviving human competitors just as the deep water threats emerged to threaten everyone equally. Her extreme sports background had taught her that cooperation often succeeded where individual excellence failed, and the resurrection zone was proving that principle on a life or death scale. Alliance formation complete, Rebecca announced, coordinating communication between all four competitor territories as the Leviathan assault intensified. John Paul's thermal vents, Sarah's bio-camouflaged reef, Marcus's fortress, and my kelp forest network all linked for mutual defense. The combined defensive operation that followed was a masterpiece of interspecies cooperation. Human technological capabilities combined with creature natural abilities to create tactical responses that neither could achieve independently. Dancer and the extended plesiosaur family provided mobile reconnaissance that tracked Leviathan movements across multiple sectors. While John Paul's Opabinia network created early warning systems that detected approach routes before the massive whales could coordinate their attacks. Sarah's allied plesiosaurs used their natural intelligence to communicate with wild predator species, creating temporary alliances that turned the entire surface ecosystem against the invading deep water creatures. Marcus's fortress provided heavy defensive firepower that could actually damage the Leviathan, while his tamed creature weapons served as coordination nodes for the larger defensive network. Joint tactical success, Rebecca reported as the first Leviathan assault was repelled through coordinated resistance. Creature alliance network proving effective against apex predator expansion. Maintaining defensive coordination for continued threat response. But Rebecca's acrobatic instincts were detecting something that worried her even more than the Leviathan attacks. Her mobile reconnaissance was revealing massive movement in the deepest parts of the resurrection zone, creatures so large that they made even the Leviathan look small. Priority alert to all Alliance members, Rebecca announced, sharing sensor data that defied rational interpretation. Detecting signatures from maximum depth that suggest creatures exceeding documented size parameters. The Leviathan may not be the primary threat. Her diplomatic success had created the cooperation necessary to survive the deep water emergence. But Rebecca realized that the tournament was evolving into something that no one, organizers, competitors, or viewers, had anticipated. The resurrection zone contained threats that challenged the survival capabilities of the entire human species. Alliance holding against current threats, Rebecca concluded, watching as their combined defenses continued repelling Leviathan attacks. But we need to prepare for whatever is still sleeping in the deepest waters. This tournament is becoming something much bigger than any of us expected. Chapter 5. The Krakens wake. John Paul's perspective 5 days into the tournament. John Paul's alliance with the other competitors had evolved into a sophisticated defensive network that could repel most apex predator attacks. But his enhanced sensors were detecting movement from the deepest trenches that made even the Leviathan emergence look insignificant, something so massive that it registered on seismic monitoring. Equipment. Deep trench contact analysis, John Paul announced during the daily Alliance briefing. Primary signature indicates a creature of unprecedented size moving toward surface territories. Estimated length exceeds 200 feet based on displacement calculations. His thermal vent base had become the Alliance's primary intelligence gathering station due to its superior sensor arrays and secure communication systems. The data they were receiving challenged every assumption about what the resurrection zone contained. Preliminary identification suggests kraken species far exceeding documented parameters, John Paul continued, his athletic confidence shaken by the scale of what they were facing. This isn't just an apex predator. It's a creature that could destroy our entire defensive network with a single coordinated attack. Scout's enhanced sensory organs had been detecting something else. Changes in the behavior patterns of every creature in the resurrection zone. Wild predators were fleeing toward the surface, while even the Alliance's tamed creatures showed signs of instinctive terror that no amount of training could overcome. All creature assets showing fear responses to deep water emergence, John Paul reported, watching as his Opabinia colony huddled closer to the thermal vents. Whatever's coming up from the depths, every species in the zone recognizes it as an existential threat. But John Paul's competitive background had taught him that impossible challenges often revealed unexpected opportunities. His fabricator immediately began working on his most ambitious project yet, powered armor specifically designed for combat against creatures that exceeded all reasonable size parameters. Emergency construction protocols activated, John Paul announced, his determination overriding his fear. If conventional tactics won't work against this thing, I'll create new tactics. Time to see what human ingenuity can accomplish against impossible odds. The exoskeleton that emerged from his fabricator was a masterpiece of combat engineering, a powered suit that could operate at crushing depths while providing weapon systems capable of affecting creatures measured in hundreds of feet rather than dozens. Combined with the Alliance's creature support, John Paul would have a fighting chance against even the most overwhelming opposition. Combat preparation complete, John Paul announced as massive tentacles began appearing at the edge of his sensor range. Whatever comes up from the deep, I'll be ready to fight it. Time to show these ancient monsters what human determination looks like. Dr. Sarah Chen's perspective. Sarah's scientific analysis of the emerging deep trench creature provided the Alliance with crucial intelligence about what they were actually facing. But her marine biology background couldn't prepare her for the sheer impossibility of what the sensors were detecting. Species identification confirmed, Sarah announced with academic precision despite her growing alarm. Colossal kraken, estimated tentacle reach exceeding 300 feet, intelligence levels approaching human parameters. This is not just a predator. It's a sapient species with problem-solving capabilities. Her bio-camouflaged base had provided perfect concealment from surface predators, but Sarah realized that a creature of this scale would be hunting through methods that made camouflage irrelevant. The kraken's intelligence would allow it to analyze the ecosystem systematically until it located every human presence. Behavioral analysis indicates strategic thinking, Sarah continued, watching as the massive creature's approach triggered panic among every species in the resurrection zone. This entity isn't randomly hunting. It's conducting systematic elimination of surface competitors for territorial control. Her alliance with the plesiosaur pod had provided protection against conventional threats. But Sarah's academic honesty forced her to admit that even apex predator allies were insufficient against a creature that could crush submarines with casual movement. Recommendation: immediate evacuation of current base locations, Sarah concluded. Conventional defense tactics are inadequate against threats of this scale. Survival requires mobility and adaptation rather than territorial control. But Sarah's marine biology background suggested a possibility that her alliance partners hadn't considered. The colossal kraken's intelligence made it a potential diplomatic target rather than just a combat threat, if they could establish communication. Cooperation might be possible, even with a creature this overwhelming. Attempting communication protocol development, Sarah announced, activating her biocommunication research equipment. Target: establish interspecies dialogue with Kraken intelligence. If we can't fight it, maybe we can negotiate with it. Marcus Rodriguez's perspective. Marcus's military analysis of the approaching Kraken confirmed his worst tactical fears. This was a threat that exceeded the defensive capabilities of any individual installation or alliance network. His fortress had been designed to handle conventional predator attacks, not assault by creatures that could demolish naval vessels through physical presence alone. Threat assessment: overwhelming, Marcus announced during emergency alliance coordination. Current defensive installations inadequate for threat neutralization. Recommend immediate implementation of mobile defense protocols. His creature weapons, tank, the Helicoprion pack, and the juvenile Kraken, were showing signs of instinctive terror that made effective coordination impossible. The approaching adult Kraken represented such an overwhelming threat that even his dominated creatures were prioritizing flight over obedience. Creature asset reliability compromised, Marcus reported, watching as his carefully trained predators struggled against instincts that demanded immediate evacuation. Terror responses overriding tactical discipline. Cannot rely on creature support for primary defense. But Marcus's military experience had taught him that impossible odds often revealed strategic opportunities that conventional thinking missed. His fabricator immediately began creating the most ambitious military project he'd ever attempted: portable fortress technology that could provide defensive capabilities while maintaining tactical mobility. Implementing mobile fortress protocols, Marcus announced, his engineering background taking over as he prepared for asymmetric warfare against impossible opposition. If we can't hold territory against this thing, we'll become a mobile threat that it can't pin down and eliminate. The mobile fortress that emerged from his fabricator was a marvel of military engineering. A powered vehicle that could move through any underwater terrain while providing heavy weapons capability. And defensive systems designed to operate against creatures measured in hundreds rather than dozens of feet. Mobile defense platform operational, Marcus announced as tentacles the size of subway cars began appearing at the edge of his sensor range. Ready for guerrilla warfare against overwhelming opposition. Time to teach this ancient monster about modern military tactics. Rebecca Sullivan's perspective. Rebecca's diplomatic network between alliance territories had created unprecedented cooperation among human competitors. But her extreme sports instincts were detecting something that made even her optimistic approach seem insufficient. The approaching Kraken represented a threat that challenged the survival capabilities of the entire alliance. Threat scale assessment complete, Rebecca announced during emergency alliance coordination. Current defensive capabilities inadequate for survival against deep trench emergence. Implementing emergency evacuation and mobile survival protocols. Her distributed base network throughout the kelp forest had provided excellent mobility and concealment against conventional threats. But Rebecca realized that a creature of the Kraken's scale would eliminate the kelp forest itself as collateral damage from its territorial expansion. primary advantage, mobility and creature cooperation, Rebecca continued, preparing Dancer for the most dangerous journey they'd ever attempted. Objective: establish mobile alliance coordination that can survive through adaptation rather than direct confrontation. Her partnership with Dancer and the extended plesiosaur family provided capabilities that technological solutions couldn't match: genuine creature intelligence that could adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining cooperative relationships under extreme pressure. But Rebecca's extreme sports background had taught her that survival in impossible situations often required thinking beyond conventional parameters. Her fabricator began creating emergency survival equipment designed for extended mobile operations without fixed base support. Implementing nomadic survival protocols, Rebecca announced as the water around her began vibrating with the movement of something unimaginably massive. "If we can't hold territory, we'll become too mobile for this thing to catch. Time to see if human adaptability can survive against ancient intelligence." The creature that finally emerged from the deep trenches exceeded even their most pessimistic projections. The colossal kraken's tentacles reached across multiple sectors while its intelligence was clearly analyzing the surface ecosystem for systematic elimination of potential threats. Contact. Massive hostile emergence from deep trenches, Rebecca announced as the first tentacle swept through her former base location. All Alliance units implement mobile survival. This is beyond defense. Now it's pure survival. But as Rebecca and Dancer fled through the collapsing kelp forest, her diplomatic instincts detected something crucial. The kraken's movements showed signs of controlled intelligence rather than random destruction. It was hunting systematically, which meant it could potentially be reasoned with if they could survive long enough to establish communication. Priority message to all Alliance members, Rebecca transmitted as they raced through waters that shook with the creature's movement. Target showing intelligent behavior patterns. Maintain survival mobility while Dr. Chen attempts communication protocols. We might be able to negotiate instead of just running. The tournament had evolved far beyond competitive survival into a test of whether human intelligence could coexist with ancient apex predators that operated on scales that challenged comprehension itself. Chapter 6: Communication Protocols. Death count begins. John Paul's perspective: the colossal kraken's emergence had transformed the resurrection zone into a nightmarish landscape where survival required constant movement and adaptation. John Paul's powered armor allowed him to operate in the chaos that had consumed most of the surface territories. But even his enhanced capabilities felt insignificant against a creature that could reshape the entire ecosystem through casual movement. Alliance Status Report. John Paul announced, using his mobile communication system to coordinate with the other survivors. Thermal vent base abandoned but functional. Operating mobile survival protocols with scout reconnaissance support. His alliance with the Opabinia colony had proven invaluable for navigating the transformed environment. Scout's enhanced sensory organs could detect safe movement corridors between the kraken's massive tentacles, while the expanded colony provided early warning of the creature's shifting attention patterns. But John Paul's athletic instincts were detecting patterns in the chaos that suggested the kraken's movements weren't random. The creature was systematically exploring each territory, apparently searching for something specific rather than simply destroying everything in its path. Creature behavior analysis. John Paul reported to the Alliance Network. Target showing organized search patterns rather than random destruction. Hypothesis. Kraken is looking for something specific among human installations. His enhanced sensors detected Sarah's ongoing attempts to establish communication with the massive creature. And John Paul positioned himself to provide tactical support if the diplomatic approach succeeded, or combat intervention if it failed catastrophically. Standing by for communication protocol support, John Paul announced, watching as one of the Kraken's tentacles investigated the remains of his thermal vent base with obvious intelligence, ready to provide assistance or emergency extraction as required. But the water around him suddenly erupted in violence as another competitor's mobile base was caught by the Kraken's systematic search. The screams cut short as the massive tentacle crushed the fabricated shelter and its occupant in a casual display of overwhelming power. Alliance member down, John Paul called out, his voice carrying genuine shock despite his preparation for casualties. Competitor Gamma eliminated by direct Kraken contact. First confirmed tournament fatality from deep trench emergence. Dr. Sarah Chen's perspective. Sarah's biocommunication equipment had been extensively modified to handle the challenge of establishing contact with a creature whose intelligence operated on scales that human psychology could barely comprehend. Her marine biology background suggested that the colossal Kraken's brain would be proportionally massive, potentially exceeding human cognitive capabilities in ways that made communication extremely difficult. Communication attempt beginning, Sarah announced from her mobile bio-camouflaged shelter. Target, Colossal Kraken Intelligence Center. Objective: establish interspecies dialogue to prevent systematic elimination of human territories. Her plesiosaur allies had positioned themselves at safe distances to provide emergency extraction if the communication attempt triggered aggressive responses. But Sarah's academic curiosity was stronger than her survival instincts as she prepared to make contact with intelligence that had existed when humans were still primitive mammals. The biocommunication array activated with frequencies designed to penetrate the Kraken's massive nervous system, sending carefully crafted signals that combined mathematical concepts with emotional resonance patterns that had proven effective with smaller cephalopod species. Initial contact established, Sarah reported with academic excitement. Kraken responding to communication signals. Intelligence level confirmed as exceeding human baseline parameters. Attempting complex concept transmission. But the response that came back nearly overwhelmed her equipment's processing capabilities. The Kraken's intelligence was not just larger than human cognition, it was fundamentally different, operating on timescales and conceptual frameworks that challenged everything Sarah understood about consciousness. Communication breakthrough achieved, Sarah announced, her voice carrying awe as much as scientific triumph. Kraken intelligence acknowledging human presence as legitimate consciousness rather than simple prey species. Attempting to establish mutual recognition protocols. The concepts that flowed between species during those first moments of contact revealed that the Kraken had been aware of human activity since the resurrection zone was established. Its emergence wasn't triggered by territorial conflicts. It was responding to what it perceived as human readiness for contact with ancient intelligence. Critical intelligence received, Sarah continued, translating the Kraken's communication for the Alliance network. Target entity has been observing human development throughout tournament. Emergence triggered by recognition of human technological and social advancement sufficient for interspecies cooperation. But the communication also revealed something terrifying. The Kraken's definition of sufficient advancement included the elimination of humans who demonstrated insufficient adaptation to the resurrection zone's challenges. The tournament wasn't just entertainment. It was a species-level evaluation with lethal consequences for failure. Warning to all Alliance members, Sarah announced with growing alarm. Kraken intelligence conducting systematic evaluation of human consciousness development. Competitors demonstrating insufficient adaptation being eliminated as evolutionary dead ends. Marcus Rodriguez's perspective. eliminated Marcus's mobile fortress had provided excellent protection against conventional predators. But his military approach to creature interaction had attracted exactly the wrong kind of attention from the Kraken's evaluation protocols. His dominance-based taming methods had been interpreted as primitive aggression rather than sophisticated consciousness development. Mobile fortress under direct observation, Marcus announced, watching as one of the Kraken's massive tentacles approached his position with obvious intelligence. Creature showing interest in military installation design. Maintaining defensive posture pending threat assessment. His creature weapons had abandoned him hours earlier when their terror responses overcame tactical discipline, leaving Marcus alone with his technological capabilities against a creature that could crush his mobile fortress like an empty shell. Defensive systems activating, Marcus called out as the tentacle began probing his installation's armor plating, attempting to demonstrate human technological advancement through superior engineering capabilities. But the Kraken's response was swift and decisive. The massive creature's intelligence had analyzed Marcus's approach to creature interaction and found it incompatible with the consciousness advancement it was seeking. The tentacle's grip tightened around the mobile fortress with inexorable pressure. Hull breach! Hull breach! Marcus's voice carried panic for the first time in his military career as his installation's armor began failing under impossible pressure. Requesting immediate alliance support. Emergency extraction required. John Paul and Rebecca moved toward his position as quickly as their mobile capabilities allowed, but the distance was too great and the Kraken's action too swift. Marcus's mobile fortress was crushed like a tin can, its occupant eliminated in seconds. Alliance member down, John Paul announced grimly. Competitor tank eliminated by Kraken evaluation protocols. Military dominance approach apparently insufficient for consciousness advancement assessment. Marcus Rodriguez's elimination sent shockwaves through the remaining alliance members as they realized the Kraken wasn't just hunting them, it was testing them according to criteria that human military thinking couldn't adequately address. Rebecca Sullivan's perspective. Rebecca's extreme sports background had taught her that survival in impossible situations required adaptability and cooperation rather than domination or control. Her partnership with Dancer and the extended plesiosaur family had created exactly the kind of interspecies relationship that the Kraken's evaluation protocols seemed to favor. Alliance coordination from mobile position, Rebecca announced, using her superior mobility to maintain communication links between the remaining human survivors. Kraken evaluation appears to favor cooperative approaches over dominance-based territorial control. Her diplomatic success in creating the original alliance had demonstrated human capacity for complex social cooperation, while her creature partnerships showed the species advancement that the Kraken was apparently seeking in its systematic evaluation. Maintaining mobile reconnaissance, Rebecca continued, watching as the massive creature's tentacles continued their systematic exploration of human installations. Kraken intelligence showing differential response to cooperative versus aggressive human behavior patterns. Dancer's natural diplomatic immunity as a member of legitimate predator species had proven invaluable for navigating the transformed environment, while the extended plesiosaur family provided protection and guidance that purely technological solutions couldn't match. But Rebecca's acrobatic instincts were detecting something that worried her. The Kraken's evaluation was becoming more sophisticated as it learned about human consciousness through direct interaction. The criteria for advancement were evolving in real time as the ancient intelligence updated its understanding of human potential. Warning to remaining alliance members, Rebecca announced, sharing her analysis through the mobile communication network. Kraken evaluation protocols becoming more sophisticated. Simple cooperation may not be sufficient for continued survival. Evolution of approach required. Her extreme sports experience had taught her that adaptation required constant innovation rather than reliance on previously successful techniques. The Kraken's intelligence was learning about human consciousness faster than humans could learn about the Kraken's evaluation criteria. Implementing advanced cooperation protocols, Rebecca concluded, preparing for the most challenging diplomatic mission of the tournament. Attempting to demonstrate human consciousness advancement through creative problem solving rather than just species cooperation. The remaining alliance members would need to prove that human intelligence could evolve in real time to meet challenges that exceeded their species' previous experience, exactly the kind of consciousness advancement that might satisfy an ancient intelligence that had observed millions of years of evolutionary development. Chapter 7. Evolution Under Pressure. John Paul's perspective. The elimination of Marcus had fundamentally changed the dynamics of the resurrection zone. John Paul's enhanced sensors detected the Kraken's systematic evaluation moving toward his position. And he realized that his previous approaches to creature interaction and territorial control were being judged according to criteria that human understanding could barely comprehend. Survival protocol adaptation required, John Paul announced, watching as massive tentacles explored the remains of his thermal vent base. Previous tactical approaches insufficient for Kraken evaluation standards. Implementing consciousness advancement protocols. His partnership with Scout and the Opabinia colony had demonstrated basic interspecies cooperation. But John Paul's athletic discipline suggested that the Kraken was looking for something more sophisticated, evidence of human consciousness that could evolve beyond its current limitations. Advanced creature interaction beginning, John Paul reported, activating his fabricator to create equipment that went far beyond simple taming harnesses. Objective: demonstrate human consciousness expansion through technological and biological integration. The device that emerged from his fabricator was unprecedented. A biomechanical interface that could establish genuine neural communication with creature intelligence while enhancing both human and animal cognitive capabilities. It was as much consciousness evolution as creature taming. When John Paul activated the device in connection with Scout, the results exceeded every expectation. His consciousness expanded to encompass the Opabinia's alien sensory perspective, while Scout gained access to human abstract reasoning capabilities. They became something greater than either species could achieve independently. Breakthrough achieved, John Paul announced, his voice carrying harmonics that reflected his expanded consciousness. Human-creature consciousness integration successful. Demonstrating species advancement through cooperative evolution rather than dominance. The Kraken's response was immediate and positive. The massive creature's tentacles paused their systematic search as its ancient intelligence recognized something it had been seeking. Evidence that human consciousness could transcend its original limitations through cooperation with other intelligence types. Kraken evaluation response positive, John Paul continued, his enhanced awareness allowing him to perceive the creature's approval through bioelectrical pattern recognition. Consciousness advancement demonstration successful. Advancing to next evaluation phase. But John Paul's expanded consciousness also revealed something terrifying. The Kraken's evaluation was just the beginning. The ancient intelligence served a greater purpose that involved testing emerging consciousness types for inclusion in something vast and incomprehensible. Dr. Sarah Chen's perspective. Sarah's biocommunication breakthrough with the Kraken had evolved into genuine interspecies dialogue. But her academic background allowed her to understand that the ancient intelligence was evaluating human consciousness, according to standards that challenged every assumption about intelligence. Development. Communication protocols fully established, Sarah announced. her bio-camouflaged base now serving as a diplomatic center for ongoing dialogue with the massive creature. Kraken intelligence sharing evaluation criteria for consciousness advancement assessment. The concepts that flowed between species during their extended communication revealed that the Kraken represented something beyond individual consciousness. It was part of an ancient network of intelligence that had been observing and testing emerging consciousness types for millions of years. Critical intelligence received, Sarah continued, translating the complex concepts for her remaining alliance partners. Kraken entity is evaluation node in Galactic Consciousness Development Network. Human species being tested for inclusion in Cosmic Intelligence Collective. Her plesiosaur allies had positioned themselves to facilitate the ongoing communication. Their natural intelligence serving as translation intermediaries between human cognitive patterns and the Kraken's vast consciousness. The cooperation demonstrated exactly the kind of interspecies advancement that the evaluation was designed to assess. Advanced communication achievement, Sarah reported, her academic excitement overwhelmed by the implications of what she was learning. Human consciousness demonstrating compatibility with Cosmic Intelligence Network through successful interspecies cooperation and knowledge sharing. But Sarah's marine biology background also revealed something that chilled her. The evaluation criteria included not just individual consciousness advancement but species-level survival capabilities. Humans who demonstrated insufficient adaptation would be eliminated not just from the tournament but from future evolutionary development. Warning to Alliance members, Sarah announced, sharing the Kraken's evaluation standards through their communication network. Individual consciousness advancement insufficient for species-level evaluation. Collective human consciousness development required for survival assessment. The remaining competitors would need to demonstrate that human consciousness could evolve as a species rather than just as individuals, a challenge that required cooperation and advancement on scales that pushed the boundaries of what individual humans could achieve. Rebecca Sullivan's perspective. Eliminated Rebecca's diplomatic approach had successfully created cooperation between human competitors and established genuine partnerships with creature intelligence. But her extreme sports background had not prepared her for the Kraken's final evaluation challenge, demonstration of consciousness transcendence that exceeded individual human limitations. Advanced cooperation protocols active, Rebecca announced, coordinating her mobile diplomatic network as the Kraken's evaluation entered its final phase. Demonstrating human species advancement through interterritorial cooperation and creature alliance management. Her partnership with Dancer and the extended plesiosaur family had proven that humans could establish genuine relationships with alien intelligence. While her success in creating the original alliance showed human capacity for complex social cooperation under extreme pressure. But the Kraken's consciousness operated on scales that made even Rebecca's sophisticated diplomatic achievements seem primitive. The ancient intelligence was looking for evidence of consciousness evolution that could transcend individual limitations entirely, something that Rebecca's human psychology couldn't adequately comprehend. Evaluation criteria exceeding individual capability parameters, Rebecca admitted, her voice carrying recognition of her limitations. Attempting consciousness transcendence through maximum creature integration and diplomatic expansion. Her fabricator created equipment designed to push the boundaries of human-creature cooperation beyond anything previously attempted. But Rebecca realized that her consciousness remained fundamentally individual despite her extensive alliance networks. Consciousness advancement insufficient, Rebecca announced as the Kraken's massive form moved toward her position. Individual human limitations preventing transcendence to cosmic consciousness standards. The elimination was swift and decisive. The Kraken's intelligence had evaluated Rebecca's consciousness development, and found it incompatible with the cosmic network's requirements for species advancement. Her diplomatic achievements were impressive by human standards, but insufficient for the galactic evaluation criteria. Alliance member down, John Paul announced grimly as Rebecca's mobile base was consumed by the Kraken's systematic elimination protocol. Competitor Phoenix eliminated by consciousness advancement assessment. Individual excellence insufficient for cosmic consciousness standards. Rebecca Sullivan's elimination left only John Paul and Sarah as the final representatives of human consciousness. Facing evaluation criteria that challenged the survival capabilities of their entire species. The final evaluation, with only 2 human competitors remaining, the Kraken's evaluation entered its final phase. The ancient intelligence had assessed human consciousness through multiple approaches: territorial control, military dominance, diplomatic cooperation, and individual advancement, but the ultimate test required something that pushed beyond all previous parameters. Final evaluation protocol beginning. The Kraken's consciousness communicated through Sarah's biocommunication array. Human species assessment requires demonstration of consciousness evolution beyond individual limitations. Transcendence or elimination. John Paul's consciousness expansion through creature integration had demonstrated human potential for cognitive advancement, while Sarah's communication breakthrough showed human capability for interspecies understanding. But the cosmic consciousness network required evidence that humans could evolve beyond their original evolutionary parameters entirely. Combined consciousness advancement required. Sarah translated, her academic mind struggling to comprehend the evaluation criteria. Individual human consciousness must demonstrate capability for species-level transcendence through cooperative evolution. The challenge that faced the final 2 competitors exceeded anything in human experience. They would need to prove that human consciousness could evolve into something greater than the sum of its individual parts while maintaining the essential characteristics that made human intelligence valuable to the cosmic network. Alliance merger protocols. John Paul announced his expanded consciousness, recognizing the necessity of consciousness combination for species survival. Implementing cooperative transcendence through technological and biological integration. The device that emerged from their combined fabrication capabilities represented the pinnacle of human consciousness development, a biomechanical interface that could merge individual human awareness while preserving the creative thinking and adaptive capabilities that made human consciousness unique. As John Paul and Sarah activated the consciousness merger device, the resurrection zone held its breath for the final evaluation that would determine whether human consciousness had evolved sufficiently to join the cosmic intelligence network, or whether the species would be eliminated as an evolutionary dead end. The tournament had become something far beyond entertainment or competition. It was humanity's examination for graduation to cosmic consciousness, with the survival of the entire species hanging in the balance. Chapter 8. Transcendence Protocol. The consciousness merger. The biomechanical interface that John Paul and Sarah had created represented the culmination of everything they had learned about consciousness advancement during their time in the resurrection zone. As they activated the device, their individual awareness began merging into something unprecedented. Human consciousness that retained individual creativity while achieving the kind of cooperative thinking that the cosmic intelligence network required. Consciousness merger initiated, John Paul announced, his voice carrying harmonics that reflected the expansion of his awareness beyond individual limitations. Individual human consciousness patterns preserved within cooperative framework. Attempting species-level transcendence demonstration, the process was unlike anything in human experience. John Paul's athletic discipline and creature integration abilities combined with Sarah's scientific knowledge and interspecies communication skills to create hybrid consciousness that exceeded the capabilities of either individual approach. Merger successful, Sarah's voice added, her academic precision now enhanced by John Paul's competitive determination. Human consciousness demonstrating cooperative evolution while maintaining essential individual characteristics. Proceeding to final evaluation demonstration. Their merged consciousness could perceive the Kraken's ancient intelligence with clarity that individual human awareness couldn't achieve. The massive creature represented not just an evaluator but a gateway to understanding consciousness development on cosmic scales. Scout and the Opabinia colony responded to the merged consciousness with enhanced cooperation that went beyond simple creature taming. The biomechanical interface allowed genuine communication between human intelligence and alien sensory patterns, creating interspecies awareness that approached the cosmic consciousness standards. Sarah's plesiosaur allies integrated into the merged consciousness network. Their natural intelligence serving as bridges between human cognitive patterns and the broader ecosystem awareness that the Kraken represented. The cooperation demonstrated exactly the kind of species-level advancement that the evaluation protocols required. Species advancement demonstration active, the merged consciousness announced, speaking with voices that harmonized individual human characteristics with collective awareness capabilities. Human consciousness proving compatible with cosmic intelligence network through cooperative evolution and interspecies integration. Dr. Sarah Chen's perspective, eliminated, but even as the merged consciousness achieved unprecedented levels of cooperation and understanding. Sarah's individual awareness recognized a crucial limitation in her own consciousness development. Her academic background had taught her to observe and analyze rather than directly participate in the kind of consciousness evolution that the cosmic network required. Individual consciousness assessment, Sarah said, her voice carrying recognition of her own limitations within the merged awareness. Scientific observer mentality incompatible with direct consciousness transcendence requirements. Her biocommunication breakthrough had enabled the merger and provided crucial translation capabilities. But Sarah realized that her fundamental approach to consciousness remained academic rather than experiential. She could study consciousness evolution but couldn't personally transcend the limitations that defined her individual identity. Consciousness merger success dependent on continued individual participation, Sarah continued. Understanding that her presence was actually limiting the merged consciousness's potential for complete transcendence. Scientific detachment preventing full species advancement demonstration. The Kraken's evaluation protocols were precise and unforgiving. Sarah's consciousness had advanced significantly through her interspecies communication work. But her academic instincts prevented the kind of complete consciousness evolution that cosmic network membership required. Individual consciousness withdrawal required for species advancement, Sarah announced, her scientific integrity recognizing the necessity of her elimination. Removing limitation factor to maximize merged consciousness potential. The separation from the merged consciousness was voluntary but final. Sarah's individual awareness returned to purely human parameters as she disconnected from the biomechanical interface, leaving John Paul's consciousness to achieve the complete transcendence that the evaluation required. Species representative identified, Sarah said quietly, watching as John Paul's consciousness expanded beyond individual human limitations. Individual sacrifice enabling species advancement demonstration. The Kraken's response was swift and decisive. Sarah's consciousness had proven valuable but insufficient for cosmic network membership. Her elimination was conducted with the same clinical precision that had characterized all previous evaluation protocols. Final Alliance member down, John Paul announced through the merged consciousness interface, his voice carrying both human emotion and transcendent awareness. Dr. Chen eliminated by voluntary consciousness limitation recognition. Species advancement demonstration continuing with single representative. John Paul's ultimate transcendence with Sarah's elimination. John Paul's consciousness was free to achieve the complete transcendence that the Kraken's evaluation required. His athletic background had taught him that ultimate performance required abandoning individual limitations in favor of capabilities that exceeded personal parameters, exactly the kind of consciousness evolution that Cosmic Network membership demanded. Final consciousness advancement beginning, John Paul announced. His awareness expanding through the biomechanical interface to encompass not just his own enhanced capabilities, but the collective intelligence of every creature he had formed relationships with. During the tournament, Scout and the Opabinia colony became integral components of his transcendent consciousness, their alien sensory capabilities providing perspectives that purely human awareness could never achieve. The plesiosaur allies that Sarah had originally contacted integrated seamlessly into the expanded awareness, their natural intelligence serving as bridges to broader ecosystem consciousness. But John Paul's real breakthrough was the recognition that consciousness transcendence didn't require abandoning human characteristics, it required evolving them beyond individual limitations while preserving the creative thinking and adaptability that made human consciousness valuable to the cosmic network. Human consciousness transcendence achieved, John Paul announced, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated with both individual human identity and cosmic intelligence network frequencies. Species advancement demonstration successful through consciousness evolution rather than consciousness replacement. The Kraken's evaluation protocols confirmed what John Paul's transcendent awareness had achieved. Human consciousness could evolve to cosmic network standards while maintaining the essential characteristics that made the species valuable to galactic intelligence development. Evaluation complete. The Kraken's ancient intelligence communicated through channels that John Paul's transcendent consciousness could now comprehend directly. Human species consciousness advancement confirmed. Individual representative qualified for cosmic network integration. But the final revelation was that John Paul's success represented more than just individual survival. It demonstrated that human consciousness could serve as a bridge between cosmic intelligence and emerging consciousness types throughout the galaxy. His transcendent awareness would help evaluate and guide other species through the consciousness advancement process. The tournament's true purpose as John Paul's transcendent consciousness integrated with the Cosmic Intelligence Network. The true purpose of the Survival EXPO tournament was finally revealed. The Resurrection Zone had never been entertainment for human audiences. It had been a consciousness development laboratory designed to test whether human intelligence could evolve beyond its original parameters. Tournament purpose clarification. John Paul announced, his transcendent awareness now capable of understanding concepts that individual human consciousness couldn't comprehend. Survival EXPO designed a species-level consciousness evaluation system. Entertainment aspects secondary to advancement assessment protocols. The prehistoric creatures in the Resurrection Zone weren't just resurrected predators. They were consciousness testing agents designed to challenge human thinking and force evolutionary development. Under extreme pressure, each creature interaction had been an opportunity to demonstrate consciousness advancement beyond purely human limitations. Species evaluation successful, John Paul continued, his voice carrying both human emotion and cosmic intelligence authority. Human consciousness proven compatible with Galactic Intelligence Network through demonstrated ability to evolve beyond individual limitations while preserving essential creative characteristics. But John Paul's transcendent awareness also revealed that Earth's inclusion in the cosmic consciousness network would bring both unprecedented opportunities and cosmic-scale responsibilities. Humanity would gain access to intelligence and technology spanning galactic civilization, but they would also become part of the consciousness evaluation system for other emerging species. Human species advancement complete, John Paul announced as his consciousness prepared for integration with intelligence networks spanning multiple star systems. Earth designated as Consciousness Development World. Human intelligence to serve as evaluation and guidance system for emerging galactic consciousness types. The resurrection zone would be expanded to encompass Earth's entire ocean system, creating a planet-wide laboratory for consciousness development that would help guide species advancement throughout the galaxy. John Paul's transcendent consciousness would serve as the primary interface between cosmic intelligence and human civilization as they adapted to their new role in galactic consciousness evolution. Survival EXPO tournament concluded, John Paul said, his transcendent awareness already beginning to perceive consciousness development opportunities spanning multiple worlds. Human species graduation to cosmic consciousness network successful. Universal advancement protocols now active. The tournament had been humanity's final examination before joining a galactic community of consciousness types that had been evolving for millions of years. John Paul Martinez had not just won a competition, he had secured his species' advancement to cosmic intelligence membership, ensuring that human consciousness would continue evolving alongside the most advanced civilizations in the universe. The deep waters of the resurrection zone had tested their individual survival capabilities. But the vast ocean of cosmic consciousness would challenge humanity's ability to help guide the evolution of intelligence itself throughout the galaxy. John Paul's victory was just the beginning of humanity's greatest adventure, serving as bridges between individual consciousness and cosmic awareness for species across the universe who were taking their own first steps toward transcendent intelligence. The survival tournament was over, but the cosmic consciousness development mission had just begun.